Hey y'all, I'm Dr. Kristina Collins. I'm a dermatologist and the founder of Boy by Dr. Collins. And I'm so excited to be here today with Dr. Shauna Shapiro. Dr. Shapiro is an author, a clinical psychologist, and an international thought leader on mindfulness. So thank you so much, Dr. Shapiro, for being with us today.
I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh.
Partnering on this amazing adventure.
Thank you, thank you. I know I've had the opportunity to hear all about you and your history and your work, but just for everyone else, tell me a little bit about how you got into the research on mindfulness. What drew you into this path?
So it was actually a long time ago. I was 17 years old and I had spinal fusion surgery. So I had a metal rod put in my spine, and it was very unexpected. I was in high school and I was captain of the volleyball team and thought I was gonna spend my whole life playing volleyball. I had just signed to play at Duke University. And a week later, they discovered that my scoliosis had gotten so severe it was gonna puncture my lungs, and we had to operate. And so I went from this healthy, active teenager to lying in a hospital bed, unable to walk.
Oh my gosh.
And I was in the hospital bed for 6 months. So it was an incredibly difficult time. And I was in a lot of physical pain, obviously. Like I remember just trying to like learn how to turn my neck again, how painful that was. But what really anguished me was my thoughts and my mind of like, are you ever gonna walk again? Are you gonna always be in pain? Will you ever play volleyball again? Which I didn't. But also just, you should have done this, or if only you had done that. And there was just all these judgments and so much suffering. I became really depressed.
Oh.
And luckily my father gave me a book, Wherever You Go, There You Are by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, amazing book. And I opened it up and the first line says, whatever's happened to you, it's already happened. The only thing that matters is now what?
Oh my gosh, I just got chills.
And it was as if this like path opened up for me. Like I didn't have to be stuck. There was a possibility of a future and of happiness. So I started reading everything about mindfulness and studying mindfulness. Once I had recovered, I decided to go to Thailand to really learn about mindfulness and really deepen my practice. So I went to a monastery there, and I was so excited when I first arrived. It was like real monks and real meditation cushions.
Wow.
And I sat down to practice, and I really thought I was going to immediately feel this like bliss and enlightenment. And instead, what I noticed is as I practiced the meditation, my mind wandered. And it just kept wandering. Like I couldn't stay steady. And I started getting really frustrated with myself. I started judging myself. I started judging everyone around me. And luckily, a monk arrived who spoke English. And as I asked him about, what I was doing and told him about my frustration and my impatience and my judgment, he looked at me and he said, oh dear, you're not practicing mindfulness. He said, you're practicing impatience, judgment, frustration. And then he said these 5 words. He said, what you practice grows stronger. We know this now with neuroplasticity. Our repeated thoughts and emotions, they shape our brain. And he helped me understand that mindfulness isn't just about paying attention, it's about how you pay attention with this attitude of kindness. And so as I started practicing with kindness, everything started to change. And I remember, I was still in pain, of course, but instead of hating my pain or being angry with my pain, I just brought kindness to myself, like, sweetheart, you're in pain. Or it was the first time I'd ever been out of the country and I missed my parents a lot.
Yeah.
And instead of saying like, oh, you're such a baby for missing your mom, I was like, oh, you missed your mom.
Yeah.
So there was this kindness. And by the end of the retreat, I felt a peace that I had never experienced before. And even more surprising, I wasn't in pain. For the first time since my back surgery, I wasn't in pain.
That's amazing.
And when I came back to the US, I felt like I have to study this. I have to understand what happened, and I want to share it with others. So I got my PhD, became a professor, and I've been
just that little thing.
been studying mindfulness for the past 25 years. So long answer to your question, how did I get started? But it really was at my darkest moment.
Yeah.
And it's been life-changing ever since.
I found it really interesting when you were talking about how you had taken notice of that running negative dialogue during the time of your injury when you were stuck in the hospital and really at a dark place. And I find it so parallel to the way that I thought about that negative self-dialogue that we have when we look in the mirror sometimes. And of course, that's the background of FOI, is that we want to encourage people to take back those pivotal bookends of time where we spend doing our skincare routine and infuse a positive energy into that time, and a simple practice of mindfulness, because as you know, and you're the expert and you'll tell us all about it, I think mindfulness is really best when we can put it into our daily activities.
Absolutely.
Because as busy people, like especially you, me, all of us, it's really hard to set aside these like blocks of time. And sometimes that's not realistic. So when we can put it into our daily routine, it's so powerful. But I just think it's so interesting how you were talking about that negative dialogue. And I think as women, especially, so often we are standing in the mirror and gosh, the first thing that we're thinking in the morning, doing our skincare, washing our face, some sort of negative thought or self-talk about ourselves.
And this is why this research is so important, because when I discovered that your mood in the morning and your mood in the evening predict your entire health. They predict the length of your telomeres, the health of your mitochondria.
Okay, I want to ask you about this because as scientists, of course, we've studied all about the telomeres, but I'm wondering, could you give an explanation of what are telomeres, what are mitochondria, what does that mean?
Absolutely. So your telomeres are the best physiological marker of aging we have. And here's what's interesting about them. So we used to think that your telomeres were directly correlated to age. So if you were a young child, you had long telomeres. If you were older, you had short telomeres. But then we started studying soldiers coming back from war. And these were like young, healthy 25-year-olds, right? They looked great and young. Right. But when you looked at their telomeres, they were short. And so we realized that stress impacts your telomeres. Your mood impacts your telomeres. And what's so interesting, exciting about this research is it shows that your mood in the morning and your mood in the evening predict the length of your telomeres. So if you can protect your mood during that time, and to bring it back to what you were saying, normally we wake up in the morning, we do our skincare products, but we're looking in the mirror and we're like, ooh, I don't know.
Yep.
If we can infuse that with kindness, with self-compassion, with mindfulness, with gratitude, then not only are we taking care of our mental health, we actually are improving our physiological well-being. And so really partnering with you and thinking about how we can offer women skincare rituals that also, while you're practicing in your busy life, right, it doesn't take any more time to offer myself kindness, to say, oh, I'm taking care of you right now by using this beautiful product, by using organic ingredients, by using something that's science-based that I know is good for me, instead of judging myself.
Right. I find that so interesting to think that the telomeres can actually lengthen or shorten depending on what's happening in our lives. I mean, I find that just mind-blowing. And it really does sort of speak to the idea that the fountain of youth is sort of love, self-love, kindness, that love we project into the world, the love we bring into ourselves. I mean, I fangirl over Dr. Shapiro all the time because you're bringing so much positive light into the world and doing it in a way that is research focused, is science focused, so that it's undeniable the fact that these things that used to be kind of woo-woo, are actually really, really important.
Absolutely. And that's what's so interesting is that, when we judge and criticize ourselves, we're releasing this whole cascade of neurochemistry that's not good for us.
Yeah.
That when we judge ourselves, it shuts down the learning centers of our brain. It releases toxins into the body.
Wow.
And so practicing self-kindness is a way to really heal ourselves from the inside out. And I want to be clear, this doesn't mean that you're happy all the time.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you lie to yourself. What it means is you treat yourself like you would treat a dear friend.
Yeah.
That you'd be sweet and supportive and kind and caring. And as you do that, you're actually releasing this cascade of neurochemistry that's good for you.
So I did want to ask you about a word that you mentioned earlier, and that's neuroplasticity. I've heard it. I think everyone's kind of heard that tag word here and there. I'm curious, what does that mean exactly?
I think neuroplasticity is actually one of the most important scientific discoveries in the last 400 years.
Wow.
And I think it's the most hopeful. So we used to think that the brain was static and fixed, that it couldn't change. And really up until the 1990s, we believed that. But the discovery of neuroplasticity is really that our brain is always changing throughout our entire life, that even into your 90s, you see neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons.
Yeah.
And so what neuroplasticity, the most basic way to understand it is whatever you practice grows stronger. My repeated thoughts, my repeated emotions and behaviors, they carve out neural pathways in my brain. And what this means is no matter what mistakes you've made or no matter what you've done, you can always begin again. You can always choose to have a new thought or a new emotional pathway, and it literally changes the architecture of your brain. And so in this way, we can rewire our brain to be happier, kinder, more generous, more patient.
That's incredible, because I think you're right. A lot of times we see our brain as something that's just permanent, fixed. That's who we are, that's it. But whereas our body, we think, okay, I can modify this, I can work out, I can do muscles if I want to be stronger here. But you're saying that actually our brain is just like other parts of our body.
Exactly. And I love that you brought that up, because we all agree that physical fitness is important, and whether or not you make time for it, it's $1 trillion industry that everyone in our society agrees, and yet we don't pay attention to our mental fitness, to our mental training.
Absolutely.
And yet, just like we can train our physical body, we can train our mind. We can train our mind to be calm, to be clear, to be fit. And so my hope is that people can start to choose where they put their attention while they're using their skincare products. And instead of judging or instead of spacing out, they actually use those few minutes in the morning and the evening to take care of themselves.
Yes. What are some of your favorite ways to get present?
The breath is the easiest and most powerful way. That even right now, when you ask me that, I could feel myself just take a breath and remind myself to connect with my body. So I think physical practices are really, really wonderful. And that's why I think skincare, even just offering myself kindness as I touch my face. The other thing is gratitude. Gratitude is the fastest way of changing our physiology and our neurochemistry. And so to pause in the morning and just a moment of gratitude, even just gratitude for clean water or warm water. I was recently at a place where they had no warm water, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is cold, this is hard. So gratitude for simple things. It doesn't have to be big.
I love this tagline and the title of your book, Good Morning, I Love You. I love that concept of looking at yourself in the mirror and just loving yourself, saying, I love you. I love you, Kristina. I love you, Shauna. I think that's so cool. Do you start your day like that?
I do, and I just want to clarify to everyone who might be listening that it's not easy, and I started out as the biggest skeptic. So I was going through a really, really hard divorce, and I would wake up every morning with this kind of shame, self-judgment, anxiety. And my meditation teacher said, I want you to start practicing self-compassion. I want you to say, I love you, Shauna, every day. And I was like,
you're like, what?
What are you talking about? It felt so contrived and authentic. And so she said, okay, I just want you to start by when you wake up, just put your hand on your heart and say, good morning, Shauna. She's like, just greet yourself with kindness. You don't need to say, I love you. And I was like, okay, I can start. So I started practicing just good morning, and it was kind of nice, right? Instead of waking up and judging myself or looking at my to-do list or freaking out, I just took a moment of kindness. And as I continued to practice, I started to see these changes, right? What you practice grows stronger, where there would be a flash of kindness throughout my day, or a little less judgment, or just a little more softness. And a couple months later, after practicing, I was at a place called Esalen in Big Sur, and I went down to do my morning meditation practice, and I put my hand on my heart, and I started to say good morning, when all of a sudden this image of my grandmother came to me. And my grandma was my person. And I felt her love. And before I knew it, the dam around my heart burst, and I felt her love coming in. I felt my mother's love, and I just said, good morning, I love you, Shauna. And
chills again. I love that.
It was this moment of self-love that I'm telling you, as an adult, I had never felt before. And, I wish I could say every day since then has been this miracle of self-love and I've never felt judgment again, and that's not true. But what is true is I started this practice.
Yeah.
And I practice every morning, no matter what. I don't do it in front of the mirror. I'm not advanced yet. But I wake up, I put my hand on my heart, and I just say, good morning, I love you. And then I send it out into the world like this, to my son, to my husband, to my friends, to my parents. And it's like, what I've realized is planting seeds of kindness in ourselves, it ripples out into the world. And so as we take care of ourselves, we're really never doing it just for ourselves. It really has kind of echoes in the universe.
Absolutely. I find it so inspiring that it was during a lot of dark times that you actually gravitated towards this work. And that's when it really took life in your life. It grew roots and leaves and branches. And I think, during your spinal surgery experience and afterwards, then you had mentioned during the divorce time, that was a dark time for you, that our lives don't have to be perfect for us to love ourselves and for us to start doing that kind of work. And actually, sometimes those darkest times become almost the fruit from which we develop into our full selves, our full...
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that you brought up the word perfect, because I will say I am not perfect now, right? It's not like out of those dark times I became perfect. It's that I realized perfection isn't even possible. Yeah. And it's not the goal, right? Perfection is the antithesis of evolution. Once you're perfect, you're done. My goal is to keep growing and learning and evolving. And so what I realized is it's really about practice. Like in this moment, what do I want to practice?
Right.
And whatever you practice grows stronger.
Right.
That's the name of the game. That's the fundamentals of neuroplasticity. What you practice grows stronger.
Yeah. And even in troubled turmoil times.
Exactly.
I think just having those roots of our self-love practice, putting more love into the world like you're doing every day with your talks and everything. If there was one thing that you could educate everyone in the world about, what would be the one thing you want everyone to know?
Can I have two things?
Yes.
Okay, the first thing is that transformation is possible no matter what. That no matter what mistakes you've made, no matter what's happened to you, no matter what your current circumstances, all of us have the capacity for change. Yeah. That all of us have the capacity to literally re-architect the very structure of our brain. So that's one, change is possible. Two is that self-love is a superpower. That it is not some squishy, self-indulgent thing. That self-love, actually, what the research shows is self-love creates this chemical cocktail within you that allows you to be your best self, that allows you to learn, that allows you to grow, that allows you to give. And so self-love is a superpower.
Well, you are a superhuman, and thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Such a joy.